Hi there, it's Dr. JOYLYN Sparkles and welcome to your Power Hour. This is your time to put what's on your mind, on my mind, and we'll put our heads and hearts together and come up with a way to go from stuck to happy as fuck in as short amount of time as possible. All right, so let's get into this. Today is really interesting and informed by the world, okay? Everybody, your questions, my personal experience, client interactions, all of it kind of coming together, and today a little bit more abstract than sometimes. I like to always say pragmatics makes it possible. We're all looking for the yeah, but how, and I like to offer the how, and I will, but first we're going to have a little bit of some perspective, insight, theory kind of stuff, because this is really important. One of the things that makes me and the Happiness Clinic so different is, well, several. One of them is the future forward focus, where it is absolutely essential and immediate. The first thing that we do is look at where would you like to go, to be? How do you want to show up? And look at that first, whereas so many other programs are focusing on the pain, because pain is a much better seller. So if we can really highlight people's pain, then they'll get into my program and I'll show them how to get out of pain. And I just got tired of that because it always felt like I went just a notch or two lower before I was able to rise. And really, for a lot of us, we're getting this sense that we know where we want to go, and what we've been doing is kind of figuring out why we haven't gotten there yet. And that actually comes up once you actually decide you're making a move. Instead of thinking, oh, if I know how to handle what will come up, then I'll make a move. That doesn't work. You actually make a move, and then the how shows up. Our lives are really like driving in a car at night where there's headlights. And so you can only see a couple of meters in front of you, but you can make it great distances that way. To where we all believe that, we've been led to believe that we should know from beginning to end how it's going to go and how we're going to get there. And when things blow up in our face, it's because, well, we must have miscalculated or we did something wrong. It wasn't. It's because things are actually continually changing. So even if we had it planned out to perfection from the beginning, because there's so many parts and pieces, including ourselves and other people, that things are going to change in the in-between. And if we're not ready for that, we keep judging ourselves as failing and often even getting way off course or giving up too early. So those are really common. So the future forward focus is a huge, huge hallmark of what makes the Happiness Clinic different, but also recognizing, and it's kind of come that there's the cross is the logo. And that there are really, like, in my mind, sort of four parts. There's the mental part, our minds, our mindset, our will, what we're deciding to do. There's our emotional part, which is highly, highly conditioned, and we get used to things, but it's also great information about where our heart and how we are on track or off track. Our emotions will tell us about if we're operating, what they really kind of tell us is how do we need to move closer to or farther away from something. And by farther away is not to run away from it or avoid it, but to actually pivot off of it, move away from it, because it's a limiting belief that's not going to allow for greater. Then there's the physical piece, our physical bodies. Like when we talk about subconscious, that it's actually our whole body is our subconscious. The issues are in the tissues. And so we have to include our body in this. There's so much that's being lost, or we wonder why we keep hitting our head against the same ceiling, because if we don't release things out of our body, that's how the subconscious is storing and will call it back in. So we have to actually change our chemistry and the DNA that's getting expressed, the protein, the quality of proteins. There's our physical bodies are actually super important in this. And we all are kind of becoming aware about how the mind-body connection come, how thoughts feed emotions, emotions will then color our thoughts, but then emotions are chemicals, so that's running through our bodies, so that's, the emotions are really a big piece that's sort of the link between the thoughts and the body and how they're getting expressed. The piece that gets missing is this fourth piece is our spirit. Because it's woo-woo, because it's whatever wacky. Like, I hear people, even people who believe it, using terms like that. And it's actually just fucking matter of fact. It's who we are. We are spirit physically embodied. Therefore, when we are feeling off, disconnected, that's actually because we've disconnected from our infinite divine self. And we will also sometimes get really pissed off and frustrated with life because there's a part of us that is tapped in and remembers how easy it was and wondering why nothing's good enough here. Because we are in a physical reality, in a human body, and there is an incompleteness in that will drive us to always go for more. So it's not always just that you're not content or unable to be satisfied. It's because your desire to always want more is actually just a natural part of a human embodiment. But things become very impossible and overwhelming and unalive when we're not connected to our spirit self. Because then everything is logical, linear, and quite honestly, we've elevated that and valued that so much that we've started requiring that everything makes sense before we do it, when nothing about us has actually ever really wanted to or could totally make sense until you get to that other side and are nothing but infinite, if that kind of makes sense. So we have to start bringing in the spiritual piece of us, which is not the same as being religious. It's just a deeper connection to the all of it. The oneness, the consciousness, the universe, and some people might find that through a religious piece. Some of us have been driven out of it by a religious piece, so it can go either way. So it's not the same as religion, but it is a connection with something greater than yourself. So what happens here is we come in, we are infinite, and we incarnate. We become carnage, carnivores, we become meat. We have this magical meat suit we take on, okay? We become embodied. And through that process alone, through getting squeezed out of a tiny birth canal that is not only traumatic for mother, but baby too, because it was warm and cozy in there, and then now and dark, and there was no schedule or anything, and then all of a sudden you are popped out into this cold, chaotic, lots of sounds and lights happening. That alone can be traumatic. Depending on what your early infancy was, and Stephen Walensky talks about in quantum psychology that between 5 and 12 months, it is theorized that an infant realizes, I'm not my mother. We're not the same person, and that can be traumatic. And depending on what your home situation is at that moment, that you get soothed and reassured through that process, or whether or not you just feel a lack or an abandonment somehow through that process. I also think that it actually is maybe when we realize we're not connected to spirit the same way that we were. And that is traumatic, okay? Other trauma can be remembered, not remembered, because a lot of it happens pre-verbal. A lot of it because from the time from 0 to 7, we're operating primarily in theta brainwave patterns that we are super, super receptive. And and by receptive, not just meaning we perceive, but we're just soaking in all of this. And a lot of it's energetics and communication dynamics to where we're instantly getting the feel of the emotional security of mom and dad in our situation, who we need to be there for, and what we can receive or ask for from the people around us. We get information through the consistency of their emotional expressions to us, their actual appearance when we cry, and the attunement that we have as far as are they matching the cries with the actual needs, and then attunement as far as when there's restlessness, is there reassurance or is there a push away? And then we take that and personalize that. And what happens, so through trauma programming and then also through all this, we're getting a lot of information from the authority figures, which will be largely primary caregivers, but also government and religious leaders. And that, especially when it's indoctrinated institutions like that, like government and religion, that it's the trauma isn't necessarily just a one time, but through this indoctrination process and telling you who you are that is not completely who you are. Those things are all traumatic and in a way separate you from your divinity. And when we become out of connection with ourselves and start losing that, and then as we move into beta brainwave patterns and start and hold on to this information that we got that I can't ask mom or dad for help, or they get upset when I'm fussy, so I have to never be fussy and pretend everything's fine. So things that we developed from the age of 0 to 7, we start bringing then all the way through into adulthood and are still operating that way. So it has a whole lot of practice. So when we talk about these patterns and habits, please get out of judgment for them being there, because even if there was a traumatic event that you remember where it started from, it still has had a whole lot of repetition to back it up. So that when you are working to get out of habits and discover who you really are and play with your infinite potential and go for that, that it is not going to be a snap of a finger. Because even if you remember the trauma incident that kind of inserted, it required repetition to formalize and solidify. Because there are monks, Tibetan monks, who have been beaten severely badly, who have no PTSD because they actually could self-regulate and hold compassion at the same time. So it's not just an incident that will ever, ever, ever determine the rest of your life, except the choice to come here, okay? So that nothing, not a single thing in your past will actually wholly determine your future unless you say so. That is your infinite capacity. That is your divine nature. You say so. If you say so, that's how it'll be. But if you're kind of sick of what that's been creating for you and getting tired of attracting more relationships that are around that to fix it, avoid it, soothe it, rally around it, and only talk about it, if you're kind of getting tired of all that stuff, then it's time to move on, and that's where we start talking about this. So bringing all of this stuff together and recognizing that the divinity is part of it, and here's the big aha that I got this morning. I'm going to use God and universe simultaneously. You use whatever works for you. But to trust God is really to trust yourself. And it's through trauma and our early childhood programming that actually programmed us out of trusting ourselves, out of trusting our infinite potential. Because so much of these things that we talk about in trauma, abandonment, the things that come up, anxiety and depression, neglect, fear of rejection, embarrassment, all of these things that are super intense, that now we've built coping mechanisms around and are living our life kind of holding that in a space so to not recreate it. But it's because deep down somewhere in there is it is all actually false, but a belief that I can't handle this. And what we've learned is how to abandon ourselves. I can't handle it. I need somebody else. So that we've run to God saying, rescue me. And there's a whole lot of religions that say that's exactly what it does, but then we wonder why our life still isn't necessarily working the way we like to. We don't trust our intuition. We always want it to make sense, and intuition does not make sense because we're working with a human brain that is designed to absolute perfection, but what it does is try to organize chaos, and it can only do that by filtering out a shit ton of information, to where out of 1 billion pieces, we're getting about 40 to operate on. We cannot keep lying to ourselves and say that at any moment we have the entire picture. There's a whole lot more than meets the eye. There's a whole lot going on that we can't see. And just if you want a concrete, radio, you can't see it, but it's happening. You don't know it until it actually hits your ears and changes brainwave patterns in there and says there's sound. TV, microwave, internet, they're all actually waves that you can't see, but they are happening and we're using it to where there's even more than that available that we could start tapping into and using. But it will require us to have a connection with ourselves and learn how to trust ourselves, learn what intuition feels like versus conditioning. And here's a tip. I've talked about it before. Find some old power hours, but it's that small, still voice in your heart. And it'll often say things once, kind of firmly, and let things go. It's the conditioning and the compulsion that says, me, you gotta be me, you gotta be me, you gotta pay attention to me, you gotta say this thing, you gotta say this thing, you gotta eat this thing, you gotta eat this thing, it's never gonna work, it's never gonna work, it's never gonna work, and it just doesn't shut up, it just keeps going and going and going and going, and you can't rest, and don't listen to your heart, it's got the truth. I know what's best for you, though, I know what's best for you, I'm gonna keep you alive, don't die, you gotta listen to me, don't die. That is not what intuition sounds like. So even though it might be very attention grabbing and very much of a pull, intuition has a very stabilizing, steady energy. So recognizing those things and using your body, your physical body, to let you know the difference. And so you have to pay attention to your body and include your physical body in this journey. And then also to start trusting that I matter, that I happen to things. Because a lot of these trauma programmings, we very quickly understood we were not the center of attention that maybe we were actually supposed to be as infants. It wasn't okay to ask for attention. We were only given attention for negative things. So that I matter or that I happen to things can only be a bad thing. We have to relearn and reprogram what it actually means and understand that we do have power. We do have a ripple effect, and we can change what it is and how we show up. We can determine that to determine what our ripple is, but knowing for certain that we have that power. And then knowing at the bottom of it all, we can handle it. I can handle this. Yes, we will have to learn skills. A lot of us that came up in these tough dynamics, whether it was codependency, straight out abuse, or neglect, we didn't get modeling or information for how to actually work with intensity with the emotions that are running through our body. So there's going to have to be learning new skills to handle emotional intensity. Learning new communication skills, because most of us got modeled bad communication, ineffective, violent communication that puts the responsibility for someone's feelings on someone else's lap, as if that's even possible, of manipulation, of, I can't think of the word, it's escaping me, but where we are never truly vulnerable. We don't just directly ask for what we want. We've been told it's not okay, it's impolite to ask, and diluted whatever message we have, so that then we can personalize. When we don't get what we want, we can personalize and then go back into our addiction of what's wrong with us, when really it was actually just, that was a really bad communication pattern. It's time to learn new ones. So that is a lot of, when we talk about the Happiness Clinic, all of these things are included. It's the future forward focus. It's including your body. It's having space for all of your thoughts and all of your emotions. And like this is labeled, making magic part of your game plan, because the divine has got to be in there. Otherwise, it's just not big enough for you. If you know exactly how to go from point A to point B, you are going to get bored. Yes. You will look like a genius initially, and people will be so impressed with how did you do it, and then you can write a book, but in your heart, you're going to know that you didn't go for the thing that you really, really, really wanted, because the thing that you really want to be and express and experience in this life is going to be something that's going to stretch you, because you are infinite. So you actually want to have something that you've never actually had before in a physical body, that you haven't seen done, that isn't pre-mapped out and completely color by number. Because if it is, somebody else did it and you didn't, and you're going to know it, and it's not going to be so super fun. You're looking to be you, and even looking for what that even means. And so magic is going to be part of this, because there has to be, when we're really lit up by life, we have that direction. We have that thing that's big that's going to stretch us. Just having that boosts your happiness. Did you know that? Because we're process and progress oriented individuals. Just having a big goal makes us happier. And then having a plan definitely helps. It is definitely part of that dance of chaos and order, where we start to organize, okay, here's how I make the progress. The confidence really comes when we actually test those things and take action and do that. And then whatever feedback comes in, that's where we start to work on our perspective and refine and reframe, as far as looking at limiting beliefs that are coloring how we're interpreting it, because it's all just information, and our bodies are going to let us know, hot, cold, are we closer or farther away from our infinite and towards that goal, okay? So it's learning how to use your body and having this big goal, and then also having some things where you know where you are, you know some steps to take, and you can sort of almost envision and feel what it's going to be like, but there's that in between that you can't quite connect. That's where the magic comes in, and the infinite possibilities. And in there is also where a whole lot of, like a lot of times the blocking thing, I'm using my hands, the blocking thing that's stopping you is that limiting belief. And you can also ask your infinite, the spirit, Christ consciousness, Buddha consciousness, angels, your higher self, your soul, you, whatever name you give it, you ask them, help me see what's in my way. Because these self-limiting beliefs were instilled when we were so small, so many of them. And they've become almost intrinsic to who we've known ourselves to be, that we're not going to see them. That's where coaching comes in really, really helpful, because somebody's outside of it, so it's easy to see. So you don't have to take years and decades trying to do it all on your own. That's always the benefit of having a coach and a community, is to have outside perspective. Now, what's frustrating for a lot of people, especially when I get on client calls, is we don't have a space where we can actually have somebody who's objective. They have an agenda attached to what we decide. So that's where also having a coach or a resource that is dedicated to your success is very helpful, because then it's not tangled and snared or in some way attached to somebody else's life or agenda. So just throwing that in there. But what we've got to do then, if we're going to have this, is we've got to find a way to reconnect with ourselves. And that's, again, what all the happiness programs are based on, is how to create a greater connection with ourselves and with our future, the future forward focus, learning emotional handling skills, new communication patterns, and tapping into the divine, and learning body, how to self-regulate and how to get information from your body and how to interpret it. Because the body, is unfortunately doesn't speak in English. It will speak in English when you make it, but to you it's speaking in symptoms and sensations. So sometimes those can get confusing. So learning how those, and again, was like learning how to quiet the mind. Because the mind only has, like the Austin Powers, no volume regulation. It's just really loud, and learning how to dial that down and tune in to your heart message so that you can hear, so that you can start seeing your future, start connecting with that. And when you do, when you have this big goal, your happiness, your self-confidence rises. You start actually taking action and making attempts to change your communication, to handle your emotional intensity and self-regulate and self-soothe. Your confidence goes up, and you start really healing your connection with yourself and growing in self-awareness, and your power starts to multiply. to where then you do actually start becoming aware with your five senses the impact that you do have and that you can have. And you can start seeing it, and then because we really truly are love and compassion and consciousness, when we start to elevate that way, we just naturally want it to be for the benefit of ourselves and others. And knowing that if we grow in love and we take care of ourselves, other people benefit. That doesn't necessarily mean they always like it, but that there's a benefit to everybody, whether it's because we're modeling how to do it when they haven't seen it, because boundaries aren't always comfortable. And there's not a way to do it that everybody likes it and leaves all smiling and holding hands. That's just not how it goes. But in the doing it, you gain confidence and you become a model. But again, always, always knowing that it's you that's the most important one, and you're the only one that you actually have any say about or over. So you can never do it for or because of someone else. The motivation will run dry and the resentment will go up when they don't respond with overwhelming gratitude for what you're doing. It has to be about how I feel on the inside being happy. So then, like I said, we're coming to the end, and I do like to give some pragmatic tips. And these might sound like fluff, but really, if we're talking about having a wholeness and connecting with ourselves, and it's our minds, where a lot of us, especially depending on certain traumas, do this more or less, but we sort of disconnect from our bodies and go to our minds and think that it's all up here and I'll be safe if I can just figure it out and make it make sense, and then wonder why our lives don't make sense, because that's not actually how it goes. We have to learn how to get still so that we can hear that heart message, our soul talking to us. Nature is one of the best and fastest ways because it's always connected. Actually, a lot of the physiological changes and dysfunctional brain and nervous system things that are happening with so much technology and people being plugged into technology is actually because people are plugging into digital when they should be plugging into nature. That's actually how this magical meat suit was designed to recharge, is literally like you look at an outlet in a house and they have a grounding port. The ground is our ground as well. We need to ground so that we have this level of safety and security so that charges don't become overwhelming. So we need to go to nature. Nature will give us the grounding. It'll give you antioxidants, lots of negative ions that will help neutralize oxidation and overwhelming charge. And it also is just a space of no judgment. It is a place that Mother Earth will create a tidal wave, a huge earthquake, a volcano eruption, a forest fire, and she just looks and says, I did that. There's no apology because she's just being herself. And you know what? It creates jobs and recreation for people. There's nothing wrong with it. She doesn't shame herself. So you can go to any piece of nature and just say, show me how to not shame myself. Show me how I can just be and be okay with that. Like a palm tree. Here in Southern California, there can be a palm tree next to a pine tree. And you know what I think those trees do? They're good. They're good being themselves. They just know how to do that. You hold your space, I hold my space. We both have a function here. You be you. I love it. Nature will show you how, but you have to be there and you have to be quiet. Meditation is another way where you can intentionally move to create some quiet space and not think, or you don't try not to think, but you actually just have an intention to observe thoughts and feelings instead of having to do something about them. Another thing you can add to a meditation is just to listen to your breath. It gives your mind something to do, so it can help alleviate some of that compulsive thinking because you actually have a task for it to do. But that will also just get you into your own rhythm and aware of yourself. And that will stimulate, they call it, the one guy calls it the central mohawk, parts in your brain, and that alone can heal trauma. That's why a lot of yoga and slower Tai Chi movements also help do that. They increase body awareness, getting you aware of yourself, that you exist, that you matter, that you're here. It's a beautiful thing. All right. Because the ahas are going to come through that space, so know that you can't meditate or go to nature in order to have an aha. You can only create the space for them. That's how the game works, okay? And then make sure you're including your body. Going to nature is good because a tree is its own magical meat suit. You have your own magical meat suit, but they know how to communicate and contribute to each other and kind of link in. Also helps when you include your body. Our trauma memories get stored in tissue, so if we're only doing work with our mindset, a lot of these memories stay in the tissue, and that's why we feel like we keep hitting this glass ceiling. It's because we haven't released it out of our subconscious. Our body is the subconscious. We are embodied conscious. It's just not always up to our conscious awareness, so we have to get it out of the tissue. Also having to include the spirit and the unseen. The infinite possibilities, the actual unconditional love that we are, that we came from, that we can tap into at any moment. We are the drop in the ocean. We are the ocean in a drop. That's who we truly are. And so we can tap back into that any time. I have been to hell so many times, and it's only because I turned my back on the sun. It feels cold that way. All you see is darkness. All I had to do was turn around. It's there at any moment. It's like, I don't know, but enlightenment is right here. We're actually already enlightened. It's just a matter of realizing that. That's when we actually get enlightened, you know? So including spirit and infinite possibilities, knowing that what you really, really want is something that you can't totally figure out with your human brain. You're going to have to get some divine help. And that's actually kind of fun when you start tapping into that and getting some sweet relief in times when you just thought there's no way, but I'm going to believe anyway. It's really fun. It's really fun. You get to know different parts and pieces of yourself. It's a trip. Then identity shifting, really changing who you see yourself as. And that's part of the healing process of seeing yourself as, I happen to things, I am infinite, I have power, I can handle this. And so in this or that area of my life or relationship, I would like to show up this way. And then I start making choices as that so that I start to see it and witness it with my own five senses. All right, I think we got that. So again, everything is connected. You are everything. And if magic isn't part of your game plan and what you're actually going for is not wrong or bad, it's just not big enough. And the stretch is tough. And that's where knowing who you are, shifting your identity, the future forward focus, having and learning new emotional handling skills, because it's going to be intense sometimes. Learning body practices that actually help release the trauma so it doesn't have to be intense forever. And also learning how to, there are different meditation practices and things that help connect with your spirit team so that you don't feel alone even, when you're with people or all by yourself. You have this sense of connection and stability so that you don't need it from somebody else. So then all your relationships just become more stable because you're the base and you're stable. So I would love to show you this and talk to you about this. And if you're ready to go, if you're ready to just say yes, I want to know more of me. I'm a badass and I know it, but I don't know how to actually fully express it. And I haven't been in this area of my life and this isn't going well and my body's showing me this and I don't know what it means. Then we've got to talk. All right. So I will put it in the link to you schedule a call for clarity. We're going to have a conversation about what it is you need and how I can support that. Okay. I know I'm good at what I do. I've lived through this, so I have so much space. And for you to have a resource dedicated to you and your success, I would love to be part of that because I just get a kick out of it. I love seeing people light up. I love seeing the confidence, how it empowers and grows. I love that. So let's connect. If you're ready, I would love to talk to you about the possibilities that exist and explore how we can work together. And until then, I'll be randomly showing up in group and on the page, and next week for sure in happy hour or power hour. So happy hour, we should call it happy hour, but power hour for now. I love you so much, and I hope you have a fabulous day. Can't wait to talk to you. Mwah.